not be mistaken, for the law given to you will be fulfilled. So subdue your heart and secure it to what is good. Do not allow yourself to be tempted, for an uncontrolled hand shall receive its wages. And do not let your mouth take hold of your soul. Let your answers be true. Let the wicked take all you have, for what awaits you is greater than all possessions. So I give you this charge. Live so that the lowly may find life and light in me.
Well, excited you're here. I didn't see any cars in the ditch this morning on my way in, which I was a little disappointed about because I was hoping to pull someone out. But it is, maybe we'll get some cookies in the parking lot on the way out, and that'll be fun. We are, and I'm talking cookies, not like eating cookies. I'm like spinning cookies. How many of you call them donuts? How many of you call them cookies? Oh, okay. Well, that was awkward. We're in a series called Extreme Teachings, and we're looking at some of the things that Jesus talked about in probably his most famous message called the Sermon on the Mount. We're looking at the second part of it. The first part was the Beatitudes. Second part, here are these statements that are really the common law, the very popular law that people would have known. They had heard it spoke on many times. But what Jesus is doing is he's taking sort of the letter of the law and showing us the heart behind it. And it's the heart behind it that matters. And that's what Jesus is wanting for people to engage in. And yet it sounds extreme to those who were listening, and even sounds extreme to us this day and age as we are listening to the heart of what God wants us to be. And so we're going to be looking at the third one today. Before I jump into that, though, I want to say two things really quick. The first one is this. Baptism is next week, and I am pumped about our baptisms coming up. In fact, I have a friend who attends the noon gathering. He's probably like 110, and he signed up to get baptized. So he's getting baptized next week at the noon gathering. I'm pumped about that. And then last night, two of my friends that were here, and they're an older couple, they're like, okay, we've put it off too long. We're signing up to follow Jesus in obedience to what he's told us to do. So isn't that awesome? Two things out of that I love. Number one, we're a church that gears to the young, and we lean into the wisdom of the wise. And while we gear to the young, we have more old people in our church than in the history of this church, which is awesome. And they're not just showing up, they're giving their life to Jesus, and they're getting baptized. And I just love that. I love being a multi-generational church where babies are being born and funerals are taking place. I love that all across the gamut, and that's important. And then the other thing I want to tell you about is in the Sermon on the Mount, we talked about one section, and then last week we talked about another section on adultery, and then the following section is on divorce, and then the next section is on vows. We're skipping the divorce section, and we're moving to the vows section. But I so want to do the divorce section, and what we've decided to do, because we really want to do that intentionally, is we're ending the series of extreme teachings by going back and doing that divorce session, and you're not going to want to miss it. It's going to be a powerful, powerful gathering. So December 4th, 7th, and 8th is the weekend that we're doing that section of Scripture. You're not going to want to miss a moment of it, so get here early for that. I just believe God has something powerful he wants to do in that message. So don't miss it. It's going to be phenomenal. So we got a couple of boom shakalaka weeks in a row. Don't miss any of them. Show up. It's going to be boom. And we'll do a Thanksgiving right in the middle of all of that. Okay, let's jumping into today's conversation about the extreme teachings. We've looked at thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not commit adultery. Basically, the heart behind that was people matter. People matter. How we view, love, speak, and look at people matters. People matters. That's the heart behind it. Jesus is going to take us there again in a second. But we start in Matthew chapter 5, verse 33. And Matthew 5, verse 33 says this, you have also heard that our ancestors were told, you must not break your vows. You must carry out the vows you made to the Lord. So what's he saying here? Basically, it's not too complicated. Do what you say you're going to do. Don't lie. Don't be a liar. Don't tell lies. This is what Jesus is hitting on right here. Now, 3 weeks ago, again, we talked about thou shalt not murder, you should not murder, and I asked how many of you have murdered in your heart. Whole bunch of hands went up. Then last week I asked that we talked about you should not commit adultery. I asked how many of you have lusted in your heart, and a few hands went up because we'd rather be murderers than adulterers. That's what we learned last week, okay? How many of you have told a lie before? Lift up your hand. Okay, there you go. That proves that all of you were liars last week. Okay, and so I see what's going on right there. So Jesus is simply saying, do what you say you're going to do. Now, Matthew chapter 5, verse 34, this is where Jesus goes a little extreme. Here's what he says. He says, but I say, and I'm just starting to love this phrase, but I say, do not make any vows. Do not say by heaven, because heaven is God's throne, and do not say by earth, because the earth is his footstool, and do not say by Jerusalem, for Jerusalem is the city of the great king, and do not even say by my head, for you can't turn one hair white or black. Now, this was before hair dye was invented, and so we read that right there. What is he talking about here? Like, what's going on? Well, I think we need to get some context of what was happening in the time. There were vows and oaths that were made in the Old Testament that were on who God is, and there are these vows that were made, and Jesus is going to the heart of that because what happened is people started making vows less than God. Instead of invoking God, they would try to find something powerful to invoke or swear on that wouldn't be God. So they would go, well, let's just go to heaven, because that's not necessarily God. It's a little less. Let's go heaven. Or, let's do earth. I swear on earth I'll do this, because it's not as big as heaven, but it's earth. And they would have this system. And basically what they were doing is they were making a vow, or they were making an oath that gave them a loophole to get out of it, and they wouldn't get in trouble because they didn't swear on God. So they were, in some ways, manipulating people to agree to do things so that they could get out of it and not feel bad because they never brought God into the picture. And what Jesus is saying here is, listen, everything you swear on is God's. Heaven is his throne room, and earth is his footstool. Jerusalem is the city of the king, and the head, he knows how many hairs are on your head or not. He knows this, and this is what he's talking about right here. You're like, well, man, that was a sort of an interesting way that they would have to defend their word, that what they would say. But come on, we're not so much different. Anybody here ever heard cross my heart? Hope to die? Stick a needle in my eye? Which is hilarious, because if I'm dead, I don't care where you stick the needle. Cross my heart, hope to die, stick a needle in my eye. We do the same thing. Anybody here ever done a pinky promise? Pinky promise? Why? Because if I swear on the pinky, my daughter loves this one. Pinky promise. I'm not going to pinky promise. I won't pinky promise with her. Pinky, no, what I say is good enough. What you say should be good. Pinky promise. We have all kinds of them. When I was growing up, one of the ones we would do with our buddies when we would play marbles, and if you were playing keepsies with the marbles, anybody ever play keepsies with the marbles? Yeah, oh yeah. You would hit the marble twice. Well, if it was really serious, you'd go, and then you'd shake hands. Because there's nothing like saliva mixture to prove a promise, okay? That was, and then, how many of you have done this one here? I swear on my mother-in-law's grave, yes. That's right. Or if you were in Scouts, you knew you would swear on the Scouts' honor, so you'd go like this. Oh, that's Star Trek? That's Live Long and Prosper. It's this. I gotta be careful how many fingers I show all of you do this, right? What's Scouts honor? Someone show me Scouts honor. Oh, is it this? And so we have 2s and 3s coming up at me. Okay, so there's Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts. There it is. Okay. And I say all of this to have fun, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to lay down, hey, this is what I say. Now I'll prove it by these things. I'll say this, but I'm gonna prove it by the way I swear. And Jesus is saying, don't do that. Don't live that way. Because Jesus is going to the heart of what we're saying. Here's his point, Matthew chapter 5, verse 37. Just say a simple, yes, I will, or no, I won't. Now watch this next phrase. Anything beyond this is from the evil one. What is he? What? Simply say, yes, I will, or no, I won't. Again, I've said this several times. We have to go to the heart of man here. Jesus is taking us back to the core of who we are. And he's saying, listen, let your word, let who you are stand on its own. Let your life be the evidence of your word. Say what you mean so that you live the truth. What Jesus is ultimately saying that we need to get within the psyche of who we are is this. Let's be so honest and people of character that we don't need crutches to get people to believe us. That our life is our proof. That we are people of truth. And let the way you live and the way you talk be enough proof that you are a person of your word. Which is a far cry from today. You can't believe a single thing a politician says. You can't believe a thing that often when you're talking to people, you're always looking for the hidden agenda. What's the manipulative tactic that is being used on here to get what they want? And I don't want to give. And so we approach all these things with skepticism. We have a media that is on one side or the other that you don't know what truth is. In fact, we live in a world of more information than ever before. And we often feel like we're more disinformed than any other time. Everything is chaos. And it's interesting that Jesus is speaking a truth thousands of years ago that could not be more relevant to today, that we need in our society people who are people of truth, who live truth and walk truth. And when you look at them, they speak truth. How do we become those kind of people in this kind of culture? I want to give you two things that I think are very straightforward and that we can apply to our life that I think takes Jesus' teachings to our heart. And there's moments that it's going to be tough, but I think if we will engage this and apply our life to this, our light will so shine before people that they're going to see God within us. Because our lives will be lives of truth that will be attractive in a society that falsehood dominates the way we live our lives. And so the first one is simply this. We must be people who are authentic. Be authentic. Be authentic. How do you live a life that is true, that people will believe your words? You be authentic. The world is craving for authenticity. The world is looking for it, and everything seems to be fake. I mean, even pictures are fake. I mean, there's some pretty cool things that you can do with AI. You can take pictures, and then you can take the people out of it that you want. It's pretty, or you can put the people in that you want. You can even go on some of those AI things and create pictures that never really even happened, but they look real. I mean, it's pretty incredible. And it's become a normal thing to do. And I'm not saying that's wrong. It's just a normal thing that you can do with pictures, edit them, change where the sun is in the picture. And so in this world of fake, real becomes less and less real. And yet people crave for authenticity. And to be authentic, you have to start with who you are. You have to start with ourselves. We have to start by looking at our own hearts. And here's the problem about when we look at our own hearts. Our heart is deceitful among all things. So our heart is lying to us. There's a bunch, we're like, what? It's hard to be authentic when our hearts are lying. We cannot speak or live the truth if we are lying to ourselves. And so we have to be authentic with ourselves. 1 John chapter 1 verse 6 gives us a starting point. Here's what it says. So we are lying if we say we have fellowship with God, but go on living in spiritual darkness. We are not practicing the truth. Can I simply say it this way? If you call yourself a Jesus follower, but you don't allow Jesus to change your life, you're lying to yourself. You're not a Jesus follower. You're a Jesus observer, but you're not a Jesus follower. I think that's a significant place to start at looking at your heart. If you're just coming to church and you're just a church goer, but you're not a Jesus follower, coming to church doesn't make you a Jesus follower. I think that's very important. Because you can come to church and not practice the truth. And what John is writing here is if you're doing that, you're fooling yourselves. You're lying to yourself. If you're a Jesus follower, you will allow him to change the way you live. You allow him to adjust your direction to live more like him. It means you're going to listen with open ears and open heart. If you're a Jesus follower, you're going to change the way that you walk when you realize what you're doing is incorrect. This is why be authentic to yourself. I'll go a little bit extreme here because we're in extreme teaching series. If you're a Jesus follower and you haven't been baptized in water and you choose not to get baptized in water, I think you have some soul searching to do in your heart. Because it's hard to be called a follower when you don't follow. Maybe you're not being authentic with yourself. Woo, it's tense in here. 1 John chapter 1 verse 8 says this. If we claim we have no sin, we are only what? Fooling ourselves and not living in the truth. It's hard to be authentic when you've lied to yourself. And we live in a world that makes it so easy because, in social media, we're putting up this fake facade all the time. We put up our highlight reels of life. And the problem is we put up our highlight reels of life and then we compare ourselves to everybody else's highlight reel. And we're never going to measure up. And so then you spend your entire life trying to live up the facade that you're putting up on social media. And that's hard to do. Our campus pastor in Columbia Falls, he went hunting for the first time this year. And, he was out there hunting and he shot a deer. He was so excited, but it had hardly anything on its head and or anywhere else. And so he took the antlers that he used to call the deer, and he put them on top of the head when he took his picture. Faker. He was just being funny. It's so, we've been mocking him ever since. But you live up to this difficult, because insecurity comes when you cannot be your authentic self. When you are living out a lie, you will become insecure and depressed. We need friends that will tell us the truth. This is important, the journey on being authentic. We need friends that will look at us and speak truth to us. Now, we don't need truth jerks. Truth jerks are people that just get excited to speak the truth without love. Like they're more excited to speak truth and they just need to shut up. What we need are true friends that love us so much they won't hold back the truth. Are you following me? You need a friend in your life that will speak truth to you because they love you so much that they'll risk the friendship or they're going to do it in a loving way. But they won't hold back on truth. That helps us examine that deceiving heart to make sure that I'm not believing a lie. Why? Because I want to be my authentic self. In fact, let me give you 3 things very quickly that leads us on this life of being authentic. An authentic living requires, number 1, that we're self-aware. That we're self-aware. That we know our strengths and we know our weaknesses. The truth is, we probably know our weaknesses more than we know our strengths. Man, it's very common, because we focus on our weaknesses. I read a book years ago. I would encourage you to read this book. It's one of my favorite. First, because you don't have to read the whole thing. You only have to read the first part. And then you take this test, this assessment. That's a better word. Some of you, I said test, and some of you are like, assessment. And what it does is it tells you your top 5 strengths. When I read this book, one of my top 5 strengths, that was like one of my top 2, was woo. That was what it's called. I have the strength of woo, which at first I didn't know what woo was. And then I learned woo is just you get people excited about stuff. You get excited about stuff and then you woo people about it. I'm like, that is totally me. I'm a woo-hooer. It is true. And instead of just pushing that to the side, I totally stepped into it. And now I like to woo people. It's part of my speaking. I like to woo you about Jesus. I like to get people excited about it. Now, sometimes there's a drawback. A couple weeks ago, I experienced a drawback of woo because I told all of you about Signature Select Salsa at Albertsons. Now they've been out for 2 weeks in a row. People are texting me, they're still out of salsa. I wooed you to salsa with corn, and now you all like it. Wooer. But I just step into that. That might be a great book for you to get. Strength Finders 2.0. You just type that in, you'll find it. And to say, who am I? And it's a great journey of going on a path of understanding how you work, how God has uniquely put you together. Maybe you could do a personality assessment. There's all different kinds that are out there. But you learn who you are. You learn why you respond to certain things the way that you respond to them, what your emotions are, what your motivations are, what your triggers are. Learn those things. And the more you become self-aware, the more you can be authentic to who you are. You can understand why you do what you do. The next one is self-acceptance. That when you understand who you are, then we need to go on a journey of accepting all of who we were above, all of our strengths, all of our weaknesses, all of our motivations. And we come to this place where if I can accept who I am, then I can let my yes be yes and no be no. But I can never let my yes be yes and no be no if I don't accept who I am. Now, I know that some of us, the challenge is, well, I'll accept myself when I'm perfect. I'm going to keep working on myself until I'm perfect. That's not the path you want to go on. You will never accept yourself. You will just run from insecurity to the point of depression. You know what's awesome is Jesus accepted you before you were perfect. So I think you can accept yourself. Because part of acceptance is accepting your weaknesses. And then part of the joy of following Jesus is how he works in your life to help redeem your heart. Don't try it on your own. And so self-acceptance leads to this, or self-awareness leads to this self-acceptance. Because perfection is for heaven. So you accept where you are, and then you follow Jesus as he begins to work within your life. And then that leads to the third one. So self-awareness leads to self-acceptance, which leads to vulnerability. And vulnerability is key, because it's being open about your true self. Our world needs people who are authentic. They need Jesus followers who are willing to be vulnerable. A Jesus follower doesn't have to come across perfect. It would be a lie. How often do we feel like being a Jesus follower means I have to be perfect to the world? Why live a lie? Jesus followers aren't perfect. We just have a God that's walking with us. There's a power in vulnerability. In fact, for some of you, the reason that you come to church here is you appreciate my vulnerability. Like you come and hear me just spew all my dysfunction in front of you. Last week, that was not fun to stand up here and go, I was looking at inappropriate cartoons. I don't get joy out of that. I was like, dumb. And I think it's important if we're going to have a healthy relationship, if you want me to be vulnerable, I need to be authentic with you, but the return is the same. It's not a good relationship if I'm the vulnerable one and you're not. So it's important that we all come together in a truth vulnerability, that we respond and we become true to who we are. Don't change who you are when you walk onto this campus. Be you. And it's exciting when you can be you because Jesus loves you. He just loves you enough to keep walking with you. I think it's important that our community needs Jesus followers to be authentic. Because then our yes can be yes and our no can be no. And we can live out who we are and they will see Jesus working in us. Part of being vulnerable is saying, I'm sorry, or I was wrong. Part of being vulnerable is the courage to be okay not being okay. Now there's wisdom in vulnerability. Let me just pull some of you back who may go too far. Vulnerability doesn't mean that you share everything with everybody. That would be annoying. There's a balance of wisdom that you want to learn and grow on. And so maybe you want to ask people about that you respect and that you love and that you care about, that will speak and be true friends with you. Canvas, let's be authentic people. So when we speak and we live the truth, people will believe what we say. Then the second thing on this, that Jesus is saying, your yes be yes and your no be no. We have to be authentic with ourselves. And number two, we have to live with integrity. We have to live with integrity. Listen to 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 12. Be careful to live properly among your unbelieving neighbors. Then even if they accuse you of doing wrong, they will see your honorable behavior. And they will give honor to God when he judges the world. Live with integrity. Our world needs Jesus followers who are people of integrity. And one of the things you would think is true, but is totally not, is that Christians are the best people to do business with. Oh my word. I often hear that Christians are the worst people to do business with, which I don't think is true either. But I do think there's a tension when it comes to business and customers when we look at Christendom. And it's so embarrassing as a representative of Jesus. Let me just step on everybody's toes here since we're doing so well right now. And I will say this. Let me talk about Christian businesses. Be very careful when you do that. You have a high regard when you put the Jesus fish on your bumper sticker as your business. Because you better have high integrity, you better live it out, and you better not cut corners, and everything you do needs to be perfect. Because Jesus is perfect and you're representing him. I mean, there's a weight on that. And I think sometimes what we do, you check your own heart, I'll just throw it out, is sometimes we just use Jesus as a marketing tool to get people to take our business. I don't use Jesus as a marketing tool. It ain't gonna work out for you very well. Jesus is more than a marketing tool. Maybe, if I was a business leader, I'd come to Campus Church. There's a lot of people here. And you gotta be careful that you gotta check your heart to make sure that the only reason you're not coming to church is to drum up business for your business. Because Jesus ain't a marketing tool. And when that becomes your tool, you won't represent Jesus well. Your motivations might have started off right, but it's gonna hurt you in the long run. So be careful when you do that. Think about that. Think about when you're making that business transaction and you find out that the person you're working with is a Christian. Before you go, I'm a Christian too, you better check your heart. Am I doing it to make the sale? Jesus ain't a marketing tool. And then it comes to the customers. Because I'm just challenging us to live authentically and live with integrity. And when it comes to business, here's the problem. The minute a person finds out you're a Christian and they're working with a Christian business, here's what they mentally think often. Oh, I'm going to get a deal. Oh, I'm going to get a bargain. Or I'm going to get a coupon. Or I'm going to get a... No! Don't have that attitude. You know what you should do? You should pay double. You're going to go, you're a Christian, I'm going to invest in that. And yet we often think from our own heart, how can I get a deal that they're a Christian business? They should have given me a deal. Oh, I just want to vomit. That is not the integrity of a follower of Jesus. It's not that we deserve it because we're a Christian and they're a Christian. In fact, take Christian out of it. In fact, my heart, here's what I do. Because I believe in kingdom economics. And what kingdom economics is if I'm a person of integrity, I'm not going to have to worry about getting taken care of. God's going to take care of me because it's his kingdom. And I might get burned in some moments. That's okay. I'm just going to keep believing. I love the win-win scenario. I don't want to do business with you unless you feel like you won. And I won. I want to win too. So let's figure out, how do we create a win-win? How do we make it a win-win so that you can never come back and go, oh, like I'll give you an example. I never sell my cars here in Kalispell. I always take them out of Kalispell. Why? Because I know I represent Jesus. Because I pastor at Canvas, people look at me that way. And I don't want to ruin the name of Canvas. And I don't want to ruin the name of Jesus. And I don't want to sell a car and it break down a week later. And then they're going, he took advantage of me. It's not worth the risk for me. So I hardly ever put anything on Marketplace. Just for me. Why? Because I feel the weight of it. I want to be wise. I want to do well. I would rather pay more and you feel good than feel like you got taken advantage of. That is a commitment that I've made. In fact, let me speak about God's kingdom economics when you choose to take the high road. It pays amazing because God is faithful. I bought a car in Kirkland, Washington. It was a Honda Accord. It was my daughter's first car. Flew out there, got a one-way ticket, flew out there, met the guy at his house, bought the car, sight unseen, signed the papers. It was a nice little Honda Accord. And I drove it all the way back home to Kalispell, except for in St. Regis, the engine shot a spark plug straight up out of the engine. And then the car was going, and I pulled over to St. Regis, and I went and looked at the fish, and then I came back out, and had to call my buddy to come tow the car back for me. And so it cost me $500 to fix the car. About 3 weeks later, I'm in the back. It's on a Sunday morning. I'm getting ready to come out to preach, and my phone rings. It's a Kirkland number, and I answer it, and it's the guy that sold me the car, the Alaskan pilot. And he goes, "Hey, I'm just checking in on how that car's doing." And I'm like, "Oh, well, the car's running." And he's like, "Yeah, well, he got you home just fine?" I'm like, "Well, I had to tow it from St. Regis because it blew a thing." He goes, "No." And I go, "I know." And he goes, "Shut up." And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "How much did it cost to fix it?" And I go, "It was about $500. And he goes, "I'm sending you $500. I'm like, "You don't have to do that. I'm fine. It's fixed." He goes, "No, I want to send you $500. And I said, "Okay." About a year later, I see a car in Colorado that I want for my son. It's a Suzuki. Anybody drive a Suzuki? Yeah. And so I bought this Suzuki. I called him. It was like $2,000. And I called him and I said, "I will fly down and pick it up. And I'm gonna Venmo you $500 as a deposit that you keep it for me. I'll get a plane ticket, fly down, drive back." He's like, "Awesome." We were all like, all good. I bought my plane ticket. The next morning, he calls me. And he says, he didn't call me. Sorry, he messaged me. And he said, "I am so sorry to do this. I sold the car out from underneath you." And he goes, "Someone offered me $3,000 instead of $2,000. And he goes, "And I know it's within 24 hours so you can cancel your ticket. And I'm gonna split the profit with you." So he sent me additional $500 plus my deposit. I'm making money right now on buying cars I never get. And the reason I tell you those stories is because kingdom economic works. Not that you're gonna get rich on it, but you just say, "God, I'm gonna do a win-win in every situation so that you look good, even if at times I get taken advantage of, but I'm just gonna put it in your hand because I wanna live a life of integrity. And my integrity is more important than any number with a dollar sign in front of it." Integrity matters, and our world lacks it, and it's rare. And Jesus' statement is powerful. Let your yes be yes, and your no be no. Be a person of integrity. This is the best way to be a Jesus follower. And I'm going to tell you, integrity is lost in the little things. It's lost in the little things. It's like a white lie, but there's no such thing as a white lie. A white lie is just as black as a black lie. It's a lie. There's no such thing as cut in a corner. In fact, this week alone, I was at a board meeting on Thursday night, and we were here until about 8, 9 o'clock, and my wife texted me, and she says, "Kevin, we're out of paper, and I need you to bring some paper home. Can you bring some paper home for the church? Because I need to fill out some foster paper and take it early in the morning into the office." And I'm like, "Okay." So I went and I grabbed a ream of paper from this church, and I put it in my bag. And I made sure, because, it's just paper. I probably could justify taking a ream of paper home and being okay with it, because I'll print some church stuff off. I'll be okay taking, but it's not my paper. It's your paper. And as a person of integrity, I can't just take it and go, "It's nothing," as I put it in. So I figured out how much each ream of paper is that we buy. It's like $4.25, because I have a guy who helps sell it, and he told me all the stuff about it. And I put $5 in the safe to go, I'm covering my tracks because this paper is not more valuable than my integrity. Are you with me, everybody? It's in the little things that are gonna cut you off at the knees, because it's like one little compromise after one little compromise after one little deja vu. One little compromise after one little compromise after one. Didn't I just preach this? One little compromise, one little compromise, one little compromise. And before you know it, I stole the church van. Seriously, you couldn't pay me to take that thing. Are you with me, everybody? Compromise after compromise. Well, no one's going to know that I cheated just a little bit on my time card. No one's going to know what I did behind that wall because I'll cover it up. Nobody's going to know. Nobody's going to know. No, God knows. God knows. And then what we do is we become people pleasers. Purple pumpkin. I better be careful. People pleasers. If you're a people pleaser, you have an integrity issue. Because you sell your integrity every time you say yes to someone to please them when you know you're going to say no later. Here's what Jesus is saying. Let your yes be yes. Let your no be no. He's saying live a life that in the way that you live, your word is trustworthy because your life is the proof. There's a guy named James. He led the Jerusalem church. He wrote a book in the Bible. He called it James. And that's my favorite part of the message. I don't even know why. And in James chapter 5, verse 12, I like the book of James because James is one of the most practical living books in the Bible. If you want a book in the Bible that's just practical, straight up advice, read the book of James. And listen to what James wrote. I think it's a little familiar. Here's what he wrote. Verse 12. But most of all, my brothers and sisters, and wherever you read that, just think campus, because it's as relevant today as it was then. But most of all, Canvas, never take an oath by heaven or earth or just anything else. Just say a simple yes or no so that you will not sin and be condemned. Sound familiar? Yeah, it's the words of Jesus. James is re-preaching the Sermon on the Mount. What he's saying is this is trustworthy living. Let's be people who live it out, that our yes is our yes and our no is our no. And Canvas, the way we reach our world is by being different than the world. We're people of integrity because we're Jesus followers. Doesn't mean we're perfect. But our integrity increases even when we mess up and say, I'm sorry, because we're willing to own it, authentic. We're people of integrity. We will do whatever we can to keep it right, to be honest and fair. And then, when you live a life of integrity, when you live a life of being authentic and real, and you start talking about Jesus, people want to hear what you have to say because you're going to be different than the world and they're going to admire the way you live. When you invite them to the church, they're going to hear the weight of that invite because you're a person of your word. And when you say you need Jesus in your life, they're going to really listen to that because you're a yes is yes and no is no person. Hear me on this, Canvas. Our valley needs people of integrity and who will be authentic, living out their Jesus call. Our valley doesn't need Jesus observers. Our valley needs Jesus followers. Our world needs Jesus followers. And so that's our call. The extreme teaching of Jesus. Live a life of integrity and be authentic. Let your yes be yes. Let your no be no. Would you grab your connection card? Maybe you're here and you need to be a Jesus follower. And if you really assess your heart, you're like, no, I'm a Jesus observer. I need to make some changes. Maybe mark that first box on this connection card that everyone's filling out called, I choose to be a follower of Jesus. You're going to make a shift in your mind and you're going to choose to follow him. Maybe it's the second one there. I am not honest with others or myself. Great place to start. You just were honest with yourself when you marked that box. Number 3, I will reflect before I commit And number 4, I want to be known as a person of my word. I want to be a person of integrity. Would you stand all across the place with your head up? Everybody looking around. How many of you in this place say, you know what, Kevin, I need to be better at being a person of integrity? Just lift up your hand and say, that's me. Yeah. Okay. So Father, we just acknowledge we're on this journey. We're not perfect. I'm so thankful that your mercies are new every morning. You're so for us. And so, Father, I pray that you would give us ears to hear your gentle, loving, wonderful conviction. The areas in our life that need to come under alignment with integrity. May our yes be yes, and may our no be no. Father, may when people see us, they see that our life is worthy to follow. I pray in Jesus' name. Everybody said,